So you've mentioned something about identifying the quality and the narrower side in the market. So in such cases, how can you be able to identify such gaps? Do you identify, for example, the leaders who are in there, or maybe the space that is inside the market?
Good question. So, in general, there are ways in which you can be able to categorize a market. The most common ones is geography. Geographically, you can have a product that doesn't try and reach the entire country. You can focus maybe on a specific town or even part of a town. You can decide that your product will only be available in Kilimani. If I recall correctly, when Carrefour started in Kenya, their first store was in Karen. It wasn't by accident. It's because they knew Karen was affluent. And so that's where they started geographically. No one was going to drive all the way from Ruaka, though now they have a store in Two Rivers, to come to the hub to access Carrefour. The other one is demographics. You can decide you target the youth, for instance, or the aged. Maybe you have an insurance product for the aged because they need constant medical attention, so you design a product for them. Or even a hospital for the aged. We have a children's hospital like Gertrude's or a women's hospital. That's using demography to narrow on the competition. Sometimes you can use price. Like, for instance, if you are trying to sell a luxury car, often the price in itself, like an iPhone, the price in itself discriminates against a large market segment, so you're able to focus on a small customer segment. So if you're selling iPhones, then you put up a store maybe in Westlands or in Kilimani, because you are aware that's where that level of affluence enables the customers to afford that product. There are other ways that are not obvious, and they're called psychographical strategies, emotional strategies. You can target the emotions of people or behavior or lifestyle of people. For instance, you can be targeting aspirational people. A phone like Infinix or Tecno is designed for people who can't afford a Samsung, for instance, but they are aspiring to feel like Samsung people, for instance. It's an aspirational product, so you're targeting at the emotions of the user. A lifestyle product might be the people who are trying to become healthy. And so you design your product as a health product. Maybe it's a soda, you say it has 0 sugar or it has less calories. And in that way, you're able to position yourself different from the competition. But before you do that, you have to pay attention on who the other players are in the market and what they are doing. So you don't want to do what they are doing. You want to do what they are not doing. In the book, I use the example of someone like NCBA Bank. While they wanted to get into the retail banking business, they realized no bank was very keen on using technology, using the phone, while the phone was very popular, as a banking tool. And so when they decided to go into retail banking, they've always focused on either a mobile wallet like Mshwari or an all-digital banking technology like Loop, because they realized all the other players wanted to play in the brick and mortar. Everyone was trying to open multiple branches. So they decided not to open physical branches, but open virtual branches where there were very few players. They are still very dominant in that space. And one of the biggest digital lenders, actually, the largest digital lender in the country. They dominate, but probably 70%. And even when you go to the Loop stores, what that were called, all they provide you with is with internet to access your bank by your phone. So that's one way of segmenting
Okay, sure. And then in the previous examples, you used the two guys who are working at the Red Cross. So I can see that in the marketing strategy, the team leaders or the leaders, they contribute a lot in business profits and the success. So there's competition in the business area. But for example, let's say we have two companies here. For example, we can say it's online businesses. So if you want to defeat your competitor, are you going to dwell on the side of the leaders, or you look at the the weaknesses of the company, or how does it work?
So, assuming you're in a you're in an industry where there are maybe like 10 players. Of course, the market leader usually controls like 50% of market share most of the time. So there are two strategies. You can study what the market leader is doing and do the exact opposite and do what they're not doing. Because most people, when they're competing with the market leader, they try to beat them at their own game. They try to do what they're doing, but try to do it better. And it's always hard to do it better than the market leader, because the market leader has reputation and they also have resources. So you cannot outrun them. But you may notice that, for instance, because of size, that their customer service is declining. And so you decide, what I will do is I will offer better customer service. And just because of doing that, you will differentiate yourself and you will stand out. Let me give an example. When Super Metro, the matatu operator, came into the market, they already knew that customer service was not a priority for most matatu operators. So either they have very loud music, or they have pimped matatus, or they drive very fast, probably breaking many traffic laws in the process. And because they were aware, the issue of commuter was not about pricing, but customer service. Yet everyone else in the industry was ignorant of that fact. They priced their fares premium by about 10% or 20%, depending. But then their customer service was exceptional, not even excellent, exceptional. And so wherever they went, whichever route they decided to take, they would dominate. So I remember taking a matatu, and it was not a Super Metro, but they were complaining about Super Metro. And they were saying, how come these people charge? They were saying they must be using some witchcraft. How come they charge more and people are queuing to take their mat? And this guy was saying, my mat is in good condition. It has music. Why is it that people don't want to? And I was sitting next to another guy who was trying to subtly direct to him, but possibly people are also looking for courteous service. And unfortunately, when they became very dominant, their operators resorted back to poor customer service, throwing passengers out of moving vehicles, which was a thing that was drawing customers away from the other players. That's one. So you look at the market leader and do what they're not doing. The other strategy that's very popular sometimes is that if you've found 10 people and you're number 11, and you're using the example, the number one in my analogy is a guy called Joe. So you're number 10, 11, you are Jack at the bottom. Usually you focus on the person just ahead of you and take them out. And once you take them out, then you focus on the guy ahead of him, like that, until now what you're left with is the market leader. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you have. So in the book, in the best effect, as well, there's some study cases that you have used. You look at the highest competitor. Like, for example, we have the case whereby we have the most two richest guys in the world. We have Elon Musk, and then is it called
Mark
Zuckerberg? Yeah,
Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg. So this time when Elon Musk tried to challenge his competitor. And then in another case study as well, we have whereby you get that, for example, you have Safaricom and Airtel in Kenya. So these are the competitors, the highest ones. So if I come in other case, we have like the one you have used for matatus as well. So how can you advise the business people to be able to identify their challengers or their competitors? How do you identify them?
Well, when in business, usually not very hard, because people will always opt to go for your competitors' products. So, for instance, if you are making mobile phones, you will scan and see a majority of people are walking around with, say, Samsungs, and you will obviously tell that Samsung is probably your biggest competitor, and then you probably see a few other players, Infinix, maybe Techno, and then those are the main players, and then you'll decide what are the pricing models do I want to compete with. The pricing of Samsung, the pricing of Infinix, the pricing of Itel. Sometimes, and it happens a lot, is that most developers work in isolation. They go and develop their product in isolation. And I've been in forums where young entrepreneurs are pitching, and they're claiming that there is no one else doing what they're doing. Most of the time, it's because they're ignorant of the reality. Sometimes you can just do online scanning. You can study online search for certain products or information about products. And most of the time, you will find information. You probably even find statistics as to the size. For instance, I had been contracted a few years back by someone who wanted to launch an energy drink in the Kenyan market. So this is what I did. I just walked into supermarkets in CBD and looked at all the energy drinks that are there and listed them. Then I walked into convenience stores, in petrol stations, and then I walked into bars and restaurants. And I was able to identify where there was opportunity for entry was in convenience stores, because the variety of energy drinks in convenience stores was not as high as in supermarkets. So in terms of strategy, targeting convenience stores would have been a good entry strategy for a new energy drink.
Okay, so in the next part of the book, we have this section whereby you talked about being the first in the market. So you said that previously you've been working as a professional salesperson, and you mentioned that you were working on a campaign, and it happened that your competitor happened to launch the same project 1 week ahead of you. So you said that it affected your business in one way or another very much. So how does it have to do with being the first in the market, and how can people recognize you, and how do the first person to be in the market contribute to the success of others? For example, we have in Kenya, we have the companies that we well know. It's like the Colgate. When you say that you're going to buy a toothpaste, the first thing that comes is Colgate. The other case is when you go to buy things like the baby's diapers, we have Pampers. So even if you send someone, they know it's baby diapers, but definitely they are using the same name. So how does that contribute to the business world?
So there's a law that states it's better to be fast than to be better. It's better to be fast than to be better. Many entrepreneurs work on trying to perfect the product before they go to market, and that delay, like ours, costs them instead of just going with what you have. So the market leader in the newspaper business in Mombasa at the coast was Coast Week. Coast Week was a badly done newspaper. I hope they don't sue me, but it was a badly done newspaper. But it was extremely successful at the coast. We worked for the two largest media houses in Kenya. I worked for one of the two largest media houses in Kenya. And both of us had better products. But because Coast Week had started at the coast way ahead of us, there was no way we were going to, in spite of our huge resource basis, we were going to dislodge them from the position. We shut down, and they still went on to publish Coast Week. We didn't even know where the offices were, unlike our very prominent office locations that were known at the coast. So I'll use an analogy. Actually, a true story is what I did when I joined campus myself, like James and Jack and Joe. So when I joined campus, I went to one of the clubs. I didn't like the vibe. I wasn't sure what it was standing for. It was boring. And I couldn't see how I was going to stand out in that space. And university has many students. I've always wanted to stand out wherever I go. It happened that before I joined university, I had been doing accounting professionally. I had CPA Part 1. I was doing a business course. And then some of my friends in the course and management course I was taking, who had also done a bit of CPA, some of them are in Part 2, others were almost finishing. But I always used to ask them, and it's something I had observed even before I joined university, that there are many students from village backgrounds used to finish university and then go back to the village and do farming. And I always used to ask myself, isn't there anything that they learn that could make them differently? Because what they're doing is something they could have done without going through it. They go through 4 years in university and they come do exactly what their peers are doing who had never gone to university. It used to bother me. And I recall even my mother challenging me, are you going to end up like them? And of course, I was very offended, and I would tell her, those are a disgrace. There's no way. Of course, I was chest thumping, and though I was really worried that I would end up like them. If you read my first book, you will notice my growing up was a bit different. We grew up in the village, but we didn't live in the village. We used to live in a school. So I was slightly different, and that's why I couldn't fit when we tried to do district focus, things that used to be called district focus. You go to university and then you join a group of students from your district. I wouldn't fit in because I didn't come from the village setting per se. I was odd. I wasn't from town. I was from town. I had this complex personality. But I was confident to hang around people from town. But I was also comfortable with people from the village. So many people wouldn't understand where I really fitted in. So what I used to ask these friends of mine, who are also from quasi-village background, is, are we going to leave university and then go back to the village? I was asking for myself as much as I was asking for everyone else. And then one day, a meeting was held in a room where some students were asking themselves the same question. And all these were pursuing professional courses in accounting, CPA and ACCA then. And these classmates of mine, when that conversation started, they said, there is one guy who's been asking that question for the last 2 years, and he's not in this room. We need to get him into this room. That's how I ended up in that room. So in that room, we said we have to prepare better for the marketplace. We can't just wait until we leave university and then we start hustling without direction. We need to learn how to network. We need to upskill our skills. We need to invite potential employers. And so we set up an association called PASA. And PASA, student-driven, had this audacious objective, and it was the only student-driven association. All the others, like ISEC, had organizations that were supporting them from outside. We had Rotaract associated with Rotary. We had Kenya Red Cross associated with the Kenya Red Cross. But PASA was student-led, student-driven. And so what we said is that we need to upskill students. Around that time is when computer applications for accounting were becoming popular. Sage, Pastel, QuickBooks. Eventually, QuickBooks is the one that dominated the market. So what we did is that we went to the university computer lab, and I used to hire it on weekends. And amongst our students who had done some of them were in computer science, had done the applications, would teach students these applications. So we would charge the students, and part of the money we would pay the technicians at the university lab. We also would invite speakers from the marketplace. I remember we had a senior executive from Bamburi Cement back then, and also senior scholars from Strathmore University was James Boyd McPhee, and now Professor George Jenga. So they would come and speak to students. We'd issue certificates to students for attending those trainings, and we would also charge for them. At the end of the semester, while everyone else was planning to go do some goat eating we were in a bush university, so people would go into the forest, Mau Forest, for goat eating. We would take people for dinner or cocktail. We would hire a hotel in Nakuru town. We would dress up in suits, and we would do dinner and then show people how you network professionally. We'd even organize when you are recruiting the next lead. First of all, we used to give ourselves names like who are executives, who are directors. I was the director of education and training. There was an executive director. There was a finance director. We were giving ourselves names like we were in the marketplace. And when you need to recruit a new board of directors, we interviewed them. We didn't do elections. We had a panel. They would come with their CVs. We would interview. We were modeling the marketplace. That association that I was proud to have been part of starting became the most successful association at university. By the time we left, because we were charging for all these courses, we were probably the richest. We left more than 100,000 in the bank. We even had the vice chancellor. We had a vice chancellor commendation. We even had a session with them. They would give us. We had a 3-star hotel. They would give us a boardroom to use for our meetings. They would allow us to host our events in the auditorium. 2 people directly benefited, actually more than 2, 3, 4 directly benefited from my initiatives. There's a guy immediately after campus who was hired by Bamburi because he met the executive of Bamburi over lunch, because now we used to buffet lunch, and they were seated next to each other. They had conversation. He had qualified as an accountant. A month from finishing college, after finishing college, he got hired. There's another guy, one of the guys doing computer science, who was training in the QuickBook Pastel applications. 1 month after leaving college, he was also hired by Strathmore, remember the connection, to teach the same applications, because he already had about a year of experience from doing it in campus. So we were a latecomer. When we joined university, there were many clubs. They were in their 10s. There was student union. There were clubs that had heritage. The Thika district, I came from Thika district, it was a Thika district student association, all this one. But we were able to frog match and became one of the leading. In fact, even when ISEC, which was supposed to be dominant in universities, very dominant in other universities, when they wanted to host events, they had to collaborate with us, because they knew we would be able to mobilize students to attend our events. Were very reputable. We had built a very strong reputation. I recall even the computer science lab consulting us on how they could revive, how they could collaborate with us, because we became extremely effective. Though we had come in late, we were able to frog match by identifying the gap, which was preparing students for the marketplace, a gap that had not been addressed, and doing it very effectively, and that we became the most dominant association at university.
Okay, just to ask, is the association still going on?
Actually, the better question would be, where are some of the people who are the leaders of the association? That would be a better question. But incidentally, I went there a few years back, by the way, and I realized it had become extremely dominant. I just happened to be in campus looking for my documents, and I asked, about the association. And I discovered they had been allocated a very big office by the university. Then, what I had struggled to start as the first director of education and training was getting people to take up accounting professional courses on campus. It wasn't being offered. But now when I joined, there was a lady who said she had just finished, she was in her fourth year, but she just finished accounting CPA part section 3, which she couldn't have been able to do if it was offered on campus. She only got to know about accounting after she joined university from PASA. And she knew it was going to make her competitive. And what they used to do now, they told me they would advertise for a tutor to take up the role of teaching some of those units in accounting. And they would pay the tutor, a guy coming from outside. They would interview them and they would pay them for it. So it's really prepared people for the marketplace. My founding, the executive director during my time, one of the founding executive director, was MD of Microsoft Development Center in East Africa. He's a very senior executive in that space.
Great.
Yeah. So yes, it was some of them. One of the other from a different year is an senior executive at Safaricom. There's one who works, I think, for Siemens or one of those multinationals. So it really exposed people to opportunities.
Oh, I didn't know you were a founder as well.
Oh, I am. Thank you.
So we also have this part whereby we've seen most of the successful people and businesses. And then we get to a point whereby you get that most of the leading businesses, at some point they come to collapse or maybe to fail in one way or another, such that we get used to its success. And then when you hear by they have failed in one way or another, you're like, oh, what happened? So how does that come in?
Because humans are humans. There's an old adage that says pride comes before a fall. It happens every time in almost every industry that once you become dominant or extremely successful in a certain industry, you forget why you were successful. You actually forget why you are successful, and you think you can, because you've succeeded in one place, you can succeed everywhere. It's just you. You have this magic. Usually it's because of the strategy, but most of the time, even when you are applying a strategy, you are not aware of the strategy that you're applying. It's only other people who can come and study and say, this is a strategy that made them successful. So we've had best-selling musicians trying to become actors. And they do very, very poorly at it. The one that comes to mind, of course, I think is Mariah Carey when she tried to do a movie called Glitters. It was a total flop. We have comedians trying to become politicians. All right? But of course, the best example that comes to mind is Elon Musk. After succeeding in Tesla, and SpaceX, extremely succeeding in them, decided to invest in X, or Twitter as it was called. And because he was successful in complex businesses, taking people to space or building solar power, electric cars rather, very sophisticated business, it looked like he would probably succeed in anything. And there are people who actually thought he would succeed in anything. But he bought Twitter without a clear strategy. He didn't know, even if you asked him why he was buying Twitter, he wouldn't tell you it's because I can turn it profitable. He just thought, these guys are running a loss-making entity. If it were mine, I would make it profitable. But he was not thinking, that's not how to look at business. It's not about making it profitable. He's asking, what is Twitter's strategy? Who else is playing in that social media space? Why are they profitable? Why is, for instance, Meta profitable? How do they monetize? How did Meta get into the business and manage to remain a dominant player who makes money? So he bought Twitter on a whim and then started trying to fight everyone else, including Zuckerberg, because, well, he's now he was looking at Zuckerberg and thinking, I'm smarter than this guy. I don't know why this guy is so dominant in social media. If I bought a social media company, I would obviously beat him at it because I'm way much smarter than Zuckerberg. Guess what? He didn't beat him. He lost to him. And maybe he's smarter than Zuckerberg, but thriving in business has nothing to do with your smarts. It has everything to do with your strategy. And that's why I've used all these examples of Jack and Joe. These are unremarkable people, but once you pick up a good strategy, like for instance, Jack, the last guy, the least remarkable person, became the most popular person. Why? Because he picked the strategy that worked best for them. So even in politics, you see someone who wins a position by playing a very strong strategy, but immediately after winning, they abandon the very strategy that got them there, forgetting it is that very strategy that usually gets you there. Like, let me use a bad example. Usually, when you're hiring, I've hired employees, low-cadre employees, and it is I'm not being disrespectful, but I've seen it happen. Is that a man will come very polite, very humble, and that is the strategy that gets them hired. But once you start paying, it's your money paying them, is that they become arrogant on your money and forget that it is you who hired them. I've done it before, and then you fire them, and then once you fire them, they go back to humility. And now you've humbled them all over again because every time human beings succeed, they forget what made them successful. They forget the strategy. Happens every time. And so for a startup, it is very good to observe the market leaders, because market leaders are the people who are always likely to make that mistake. I'll give you a very good example. Safaricom had a very effective app, M-Pesa app. I was on M-Pesa app. They had another app called Safaricom app, which no one was interested in because how was it going to help you in any way? M-Pesa was useful because it allows you to save numbers that you keep, like pay bill or till numbers that you keep paying, so that you don't have to keep typing them.
Get a statement.
Yes, and they give you a statement. You could pay internationally. They could give you a virtual card so that you make international Visa payments, for instance. Very effective for payments. And then they decided to collapse M-Pesa and Safaricom and come with my Safaricom app that no one had asked for, in total disregard to the customer. And it is one app that it keeps demanding that you use your own data. That you can't even use Wi-Fi. They're telling me, last time I checked, they're telling me they have upgraded so that now you can use data. That is a person who has succeeded on M-Pesa and then forgotten why they are successful. They were successful because they were attentive to customer needs. Now they are focusing on their own needs. They need to manage their customers on one app because it is convenient for them. So they've made it inconvenient for all the rest of us. If I was a player in that industry, I would just find a solution that addresses that problem that Safaricom is ignoring, because we are telling them the only reason we have M-Pesa app because we like making M-Pesa payments and we want records. You can even get a receipt for your payments. We're not interested in all other these Safaricom things that they are bringing to us, like how many bonga points I have or all these other things that I've put on the app. So there's always opportunity for a new entrant because the biggest player always makes mistakes.
Okay. So in this case, what's the difference between business strategy and the marketing strategy?
So traditionally, businesses used to sit in, you had have a board of directors. They would come up with a strategy. They want to be market leaders in the next 5 years. They want to open 10 branches. They want to achieve turnover of 10 billion. They want to go into foreign markets. Those are the kind of business strategies that board members would come up with. And then they would take that strategy and assign the CEO or the MD to implement the strategy. You know, they've just sat in a room and decided what they want. This is what we want to achieve in the next 5 years. and then they will keep reviewing over time how far are we at. It is completely unresponsive to the reality of the market. The reality of the market is where you go into a room and say, what is the market telling us? What is the market demanding? Like the example I gave of Supermetro. Supermetro did not sit in a room and say, we want to be in 10 different routes in the next 5 years. We want to have a fleet of 100 buses plying these 10 different routes. They sat in a room and asked all these other bus companies or public transport companies, what are they not offering? They concluded good customer service. So we started with one route, Kikuyu route. So all we shall do is offer better customer service. Simple. That's your marketing strategy. Nothing more.
Okay, so for the market strategy, you go according to the trends that are going at the given time or the current time.
This will look terrible on screen, but you listen to you listen to the market. You listen to the market. You don't go with your own strategy saying, this is what I want. I want to be the richest man. I want to be the most dominant person. You ask yourself, what is the market demanding? And then you just respond to it, as simple as that. And then from there, you will become all those other things.